Matt Schaff and Jared Smola of DraftSharks.com here to get you ready for your Week 14 waiver wire runs. It's the first show of December, Jared. We're getting down to crunch time in fantasy seasons. We've got some new running back options to run through in this one, some strategy points to talk through as well as we go through them, and some streamer plays to hit for this year's final bye week, which has 6 teams off. That's going to affect all the positions, of course. Let's jump right in, though, with the 49ers backfield, which lost Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason in that Sunday night game at Buffalo. And that, of course, makes Isaac Guerendo not only a waiver ad this week, but the kind of guy that I think you should consider blowing the rest of your waiver budget on, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, if this had happened in week 3, I think Guerendo could have been a guy we said, blow your entire budget on. To me, he's the best waiver target of the season so far. I know, it's been a pretty weak year on their waiver wire. Kareem Hunt gave us a month of solid production, but other than that, it's been kind of sketchy. Guerendo, his range of outcomes is somewhere between like low end RB1 and like mid range to low end RB2. And at this point of the season, there's like no reason not to spend the rest of your budget on him. The question with Guerendo is how much of the backfield work he's going to get. How much is Shanahan willing to give him? Is he going to get the role Jordan Mason was playing when McCaffrey was out? There were 2 games this season before McCaffrey came back that Jordan Mason left early in, and we got to see, what this Guerendo plus Patrick Taylor backfield looked like. In the first game, it was pretty split. You had Guerendo getting 6 carries after Mason exited to 5 for Patrick Taylor. That was week 6. In week 8, Mason left early again. In that game, Guerendo got 13 carries and 4 targets. Patrick Taylor only got 2 carries and no targets. Guerendo also ran a route on 62% of the pass plays in that game. I don't have the exact split of like what his route rate was after Mason exited, but I imagine it was at least 62%, if not higher. If we're going to get that type of usage for Guerendo, that big a slice of this pie, then that's where, he could be a RB1 for fantasy teams the rest of the way.
I'd certainly agree that there's that RB1 upside. I think the if is what we have to, I guess, guard against a little bit. I do think that he's the kind of player you go ahead and, spend whatever you have waiver budget wise. And, that depends some on what you need, what you have. If he's going to be your 5th running back, then maybe you put a high bid out there, but you don't need to give everything just in case you want to save some for, some other guy that might go down later in the season. If you have any need at running back, I think you just throw it all at Guerendo because of the high end of that range of outcomes. Patrick Taylor has never done a whole lot. He's got 8 touches so far this year for the 49ers. Definitely going to be the RB2 there. We'll see what the work split looks like. I think we both expect them to add somebody. I would also bet that Deebo Samuel factors more into the run game the rest of the way than he has to this point. So I would bet against Guerendo getting as much work as Jordan Mason got early in the season, because Jordan Mason's in his 3rd year with the 49ers, knows the system better. Guerendo's still a rookie, but I would also bet on Guerendo being the lead back going forward in a system that's done nothing but produce running back numbers like forever, ever since Kyle Shanahan's been here and ever since he was in other places as the offensive coordinator, ever since his dad was running offenses around the league. So there's going to be running back production. And, this also gets to the point that we've talked about for a few weeks now on the show about stashing handcuffs. Now, I don't think it applies directly to Guerendo. I'm not saying, hey, you should have added Guerendo last week, because we're not going to often get situations where a team loses its top 2 running backs in the same game. Yeah, that's not really foreseeable. But the foreseeable part of it is how attractive the situation is. So the takeaway from that is to think about some other situations where you might look at specific players who have that upside. When we're talking about stashing these handcuffs, we're not just saying take the backup for whoever you have on your team right now. We just saw the Raiders lose Alexander Mattison and Zamir White to simultaneous injuries. That hasn't made any other Raiders running back especially attractive. So look for truly attractive spots. Rather than keeping it nebulous, let's talk about it specifically in relation to some of the other guys that we've got in our waiver article this week. And Blake Corum is the next running back up on the list. And I think he's a guy that makes a lot of sense to put on your roster right now. And it's a little surprising to me that he's still available in like 80% of leagues, depending on where you play. We're highlighting him this week in the article and on here because he tied a season high with 8 carries last game, but that didn't seem like it actually signaled a change in his role, right?
No, it didn't. For the past month or so, Corum's been getting like the 2nd or 3rd drive of the game for the Rams to himself. It just so happened in this game, it was a play drive that happened to be Corum's drive, the 2nd drive of the game. He got 5 carries on that drive. After that, it went back to 15 carries for Kyren Williams, 3 for Blake Corum. So yeah, I don't think Corum's taking over this backfield or even really eating into Kyren Williams' role at all. This is, I think, going to be the arrangement for the rest of the season. But as we've said, really all season, Corum, might be the best handcuff in fantasy football because we know just how productive this Rams running game has been really across multiple backs and Sean McVay's gotten there. So Corum's still not a standalone fantasy option, even this week with the 6 teams on bye, but a high-end handcuff, someone who, like Guerendo, could be a RB1 for fantasy teams if Kyren Williams gets hurt over these next few weeks.
Yeah, no other running back besides Kyren Williams and Blake Corum has gotten a touch since week 5, from week 5 on in that Rams backfield. So stash Corum if he's available. And this might be an especially good week to go after Corum because if the rest of your league is going after Guerendo and you don't have that running back need, you can go ahead and stash Corum on your bench, probably for a lot less, maybe even save some waiver budget. Kendre Miller is back on our radar this week, Jared. He's back from IR and Dennis Allen's gone, which seems like an especially good thing for him because whatever he did specifically to Dennis Allen really seemed to hate Kendre Miller. And one of the last actions he made as Saints coach was putting Kendre Miller on IR with an injury that seemed to be minor. There were questions at the time, like, did he really need to go on IR for this? Darren Rizzi, the interim head coach, is only adding to that by reportedly heaping lots of praise on Kendre Miller this week to reporters and saying, quote, all gas, no brakes once Miller gets on the field. So that sounds like a coach that's excited to see what a young running back can do.
The Dennis Allen thing was not a joke. Like, he legitimately did not like Kendre Miller, and I think was keeping him off the field. So it's exciting that Miller's going to get a shot. Now, I just watched a clip from Coach Speak Index of like all 4 minutes of Rizzi talking about Kendre Miller at, I think it was yesterday's press conference. That all gas, no break was taken a little bit out of context. So he's still kind of like, we're going to ease this guy back in. He's had all these hamstring injuries. And I love Kendre Miller. I think he's a really talented player. I don't think he's going to be a standalone fantasy option at any point this season. Maybe if we get to week like 17, 18, and the Saints are out of it and they want to kind of, take some work off of Kamara's plate, maybe Miller is someone you could use in a pinch. But to me, he's still a handcuff, but he is a strong handcuff because, again, I think he's a talented player. The Saints offense has been okay, at least when Derek Carr has been in there. Alvin Kamara is obviously not young anymore. He's taken on a ton of touches this season, so there is some injury risk there. And I do think Miller would be the guy we'd want to be using in fantasy lineups if Kamara misses time.
Yeah, I don't expect that we can use Kendre Miller in fantasy lineups with a healthy Alvin Kamara. You certainly can't plan to use Kendre Miller this week, even in spite of a positive matchup. And that Giants matchup got even better because they lost Dexter Lawrence for the season, the defensive lineman. Washington, Green Bay, the Raiders after that. So I think Kendre Miller is at least stashable for the handcuff upside, and especially with that week 17 matchup against the Raiders. Like if we get to that week and Alvin Kamara is out and Kendre Miller has showed us that he's producing with the touches he's gotten, he certainly could be a strong option there. And that's the kind of stash that we're looking for at this point, that ultimate upside. Last running back on the list, I'm not sure that you and I are totally going to agree on, but it's Jeremy McNichols for Washington. So why don't you tell me why I should be interested in him this week?
Yeah, well, I think at this point, McNichols is the Commander's handcuffs. How valuable that is, where that falls among, these other handcuffs. You can check the rest of season rankings for that. Check your free agent finder for that. But Austin Eckler's on IR. The Commanders are off this week, so he's going to miss 3 more games. That means Eckler's out through week 17. So he's, done for the fantasy season unless your league plays week 18. And to me, that makes McNichols the next man up if Brian Robinson does go down. I know Chris Rodriguez had the bigger game in this past week. The vast majority, all but one of his carries came in the fourth quarter of that game where the Commanders had a big lead. It was 6 carries for McNichols to 1 for Rodriguez before that. And even Rodriguez, 1 carry came on the final play of the third quarter. So he literally did not touch the ball until the final play of the third quarter. McNichols even got a carry inside the 10-yard line in the first quarter of this game. So he was kind of like mixing in alongside Brian Robinson. He's also done more pass catching stuff than Rodriguez has this season as far as pass routes go. So he would not be a, every down back for Washington if Robinson goes down over these next 3 weeks. But I do think McNichols would be the favorite for carries, and he would definitely be the favorite for targets in what obviously has been a pretty good Commanders offense, one that we had some concerns about, and they kind of, bounced back in a big way in that win over the Titans last week. So, the Commanders backfield as a whole is 7th in total running back PPR points. So it has been a good situation for running back scoring.
If Washington had pulled Jaden Daniels at that same time and had Marcus Mariota at quarterback and Chris Rodriguez at running back over that span, then I would probably agree with you, but they didn't. Jaden Daniels was in for that entire time. So it wasn't like they pulled starters and tossed in the running back that doesn't matter. They pulled Brian Robinson, who's dealt with multiple lower body injuries, and then put in Chris Rodriguez. That to me could say that Chris Rodriguez is the Brian Robinson replacement and Jeremy McNichols is the Austin Eckler replacement. And that's why he was playing ahead of Chris Rodriguez next to Brian Robinson. Overall, though, we've already seen Brian Robinson miss 3 games and seen limited duty in 3 other games. We've seen Austin Eckler miss 2 games and leave another one early. And we don't have a single game this year of Jeremy McNichols reaching 10 touches. He has 2 receptions all season. So to me, if Brian Robinson were to go down while Austin Eckler is on IR, this is a split backfield. And that makes me not at all interested in McNichols, especially with the week 14 bye. I think this is the kind of situation where you just avoid it, let somebody else claim him and stash one of the other guys, or, some other similar situation, Braylon Allen or whatever other backfield where the clear handcuff might be available. Justice Hill, whose Ravens are going on bye this week. That's the kind of running back I want to stash. I don't think McNichols is going to be in starting lineups at any point this season.
Yeah, there hasn't been a game though that both Robinson and Eckler missed or even left early though. So we haven't seen that yet. And again, I agree with you. It would not be all McNichols. I think, a 60-40 split in terms of carries, something like that. Again, with McNichols handling most of the passing down snaps. I think he'd be landing inside RB3 territory for us if Robinson misses time over these next 3 weeks. That's worth something. I'm with you. Blake Corum, even Braylon Allen, despite how this Jets offense looks, I would lean towards him as a handcuff over McNichols. But to me, McNichols is right there with Kendre Miller level of handcuff.
I think Kendre Miller even has more upside than McNichols does, but I won't arm wrestle. There may be players at this point, and I would rather target, and you're saying the same thing, target the if-then players. If this guy goes down, then this other player is jumping in, as opposed to, well, maybe if this happens, then maybe that guy does this. So we'll see where all this goes. Both of those guys are down the list. You can check the waiver article for all these guys and bid recommendations and how we have them ordered. You should also let your free agent finder help you decide which, if any, of these running backs makes sense for your particular roster and your specific scoring system. Because, there are going to be times where we talk about a group of running backs like this, and none of them actually make sense for your roster. And maybe you're best just sitting on what you got. Moving on from running back, Jared, if I need a week 14 fill-in because of the 6-team bye, who would be your favorite wideout to fill that spot?
And I can't believe I'm about to jump on this Nick Westbrook-Ikhine train. I know as soon as I do, he's going to stop scoring touchdowns at an absurd rate. But I do think Nick Westbrook-Ikhine might be your best option. It's not because of the touchdown run he's on. It's absurd. 8 touchdowns on 20 catches. 3 of the last 4 have come from deep, from outside 25 yards. So it's not like he's playing this huge red zone role either. So that's going to slow down. I don't think he's a particularly good touchdown bet even this week. But Nick Westbrook-Ikhine has been a full-time player since week 8. He's averaging 5.6 targets over his last 5 games. That includes a season high 8 last week. So the volume's been okay. And then he gets this Jags matchup this week, who, the Jags are the worst defense in terms of adjusted fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So if you can get 5 or 6 targets out of Westbrook-Ikhine this week, I think he could give you an okay game. I do think Adam Thielen is another option. His matchup is much, much worse. He actually faces the best wide receiver defense in the Eagles. I feel better about Thielen's volume. I would lean towards Westbrook-Ikhine just in this matchup.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, he's exactly the kind of player that you want to be wary of with how he's scoring, but he has actually had a fair amount of those scores come from within the red zone. He's had 6 of his touchdowns on end zone targets. He's had a 7th come from inside the red zone. So it's not totally long distance fluky stuff. Got that good ADOT, 12.3 yards there, 18.3 yards per catch. So somebody who does have the yardage efficiency to him, does have the end zone opportunities. And there's not a whole lot in that Titans pass offense beyond Calvin Ridley. So there's opportunity. And especially if we like the quarterback that I think we're about to both mention in the streaming quarterback section this week, then we gotta at least like his number 2 receiver a little bit more. So definitely a chance that Nick Westbrook-Ikhine lets you down completely, doesn't score again this season, but he at least has upside, and that's what we're looking for at this point in the year. Beyond this week, there's the schedule. It has Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Jacksonville. Now, I don't think that Westbrook-Ikhine is going to land inside, probably not even our top 40 once all the teams are back off of bye. but there will still be some upside if you have a shaky wide receiver, set up. There's some upside to keep him around, maybe even beyond this week. Quarterback now, though, Jared, who's your favorite streamer for somebody in need at that position for week 14?
We can definitely talk about Will Levis, who's in a good spot this week. I do want to mention Russell Wilson first, though, because he's actually still available in 59% of sleeper leagues. So if you're in a shallower league, Russell Wilson might be available, and I would definitely start him over Will Levis this week. Last week was Wilson's second quarterback 3 fantasy finish among his 6 games this season. He has 3 top 9 finishes, just 2 weeks outside top 15. So, Wilson's been running hot, I think, with the deep balls, the rate they've been connecting. He's averaging 8.7 yards per attempt. But I thought last week was his best, just, real life performance of the season. So, he can definitely continue to build on that. He has a good matchup this week against Cleveland. Wilson's at home. The Steelers have a 24.75 point implied total. That's 8th highest on the week. So it's a good spot for us. I think he's a really solid week 14 streamer at quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, he's completed 75% of his passes in 2 straight games. So he's playing well. George Pickens is playing well. Tough to argue against him. Will Levis certainly also an option this week, available in 83% of sleeper leagues as of Tuesday morning, 88% of Yahoo leagues, 2 touchdown passes in 3 of his 4 games since returning from that shoulder injury. And of course, most importantly, he's got the league's top QB scoring matchup this week against Jacksonville. Now, does that make Will Levis a sure thing? Absolutely not. But it makes him attractive in this week where 6 teams are on bye, taking away guys such as Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels. I know I'm trying to pick up Will Levis, although I am actually trying to pick up Sam Darnold ahead of Will Levis, who happens to be available in the league where I have Jaden Daniels as my starter. So certainly look at your league and see who might be available, because that's a player that's not available in most leagues, 70% rostered on Yahoo, but not in the one league that I play on Yahoo. So,
yeah, lucky for you, I definitely take Darnold over Levis and Russell Wilson this week. But yeah, I mean, Levis has played better since coming back from that injury. In his 4 games back, he's at 8.4 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns versus just 2 interceptions. He's also averaging 17 rushing yards per game, which I always thought, he had more rushing upside than he had showed, at least over his, first handful of starts this season. So yeah, playing better, matchup's good. Tennessee has a 22-point implied total. That's like, kind of middle of the pack for the week. So that's a mark in his favor as well. So definitely not a safe bet, but upside to Levis, and especially in this matchup this week.
And he's got Marquez Valdez-Ikhine on his side, so that always helps. Now, maybe even if you don't have your quarterback on bye this week, maybe you consider giving Will Levis a look. Maybe you want to see who else is available on waivers that you didn't realize was out there in your league. Check the free agent finder for help on that as well. You can sort by the week 14 3D projections and see how the guy that you already have rostered compares with what's available in your league. Make sure it's updated so you're seeing what is actually on your waiver wire as you're looking. See if Will Levis makes sense for you. Don't overtrust him. Streaming defenses to close things out, Jared. Week 14, who do you like on D?
Yeah, I think it's got to be the Saints as the top option this week. I think anyone going against the Giants the rest of the season, the shape that O-line is in, regardless of who's under center for the Giants. We've talked about Tommy DeVito's insane sack rate. Drew Lock took a bunch of sacks on Thanksgiving, also threw the pick 6, obviously. So we'll see who's under center for the Giants, but it's going to be an upside matchup for the Saints either way.
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether it's Tommy DeVito or Drew Lock. It's just, which one gets feasted on. I'm going to also highlight Arizona. I highlighted the Arizona defense last week, and it's for just this stretch. Like, as I thought at that point, they could work out against Minnesota. They did. They played very well for most of that game, allowed 2 late touchdowns to kind of lower the fantasy score and lose the game, but it was still a solid fantasy line in that one, including 5 sacks. They forced 2 fumbles, recovered 1. They've forced at least 1 fumble in 6 straight games. They got 5+ sacks each of the past 2 weeks, 19 total sacks over the past 4 games. Like I said, limited scoring for most of that game. They're allowing 15 points per game over their past 6. So it's just been a better performing defense lately. They've got a rematch with Seattle this week, and the Seahawks have actually been struggling a bit on offense lately. Under 300 total yards for 3 straight games and 4 of their past 5. That included a rough outing against these Cardinals, who held them to 10 offensive points. So it's been a good defense. We've already seen this matchup work out on the road. They're back in Arizona for this one. And then on the other side of that matchup comes the Patriots in week 15, and then a visit to Carolina in week 16. So I think this is a 3-week streaming option for you at a time of year where that's pretty valuable.
Yeah, I think roster the Cardinals, and then maybe even after this week, just add the Colts, who get the Giants in week 17, because the Cardinals they're at the Rams in week 17. That's a negative matchup for defenses. But you could pair them with the Colts, who get the Giants in week 17, and sort of be set, I think, at defense for the rest of the season.
Any other other defense to target for week 15?
A few more for week 14 if you can't get the Saints. I do think the Titans against Mac Jones are a strong play. Tennessee's a better defense than what they showed against Washington last week, so I think they'll bounce back. And I think the Dolphins are in play as a streamer this week at home for the Jets, who there's just nothing working for the Jets at this point. The Dolphins defense has been better lately. The Jets are only implied for 19.5 points this week. It's fifth lowest on the week. So I think those are decent options for week 14. For week 15, it's the Ravens who get the Giants. So, Baltimore is going to be 13-point favorite in that game. Whoever's under center for the Giants is going to have to drop back way more than they want them to. So I think there's going to be upside to the Ravens next week.
Yeah, for sure. I've mentioned the free agent finder a couple times. You can also find our usual trio of waiver articles. That includes the streaming defense guide, which has some of the teams that we talked about plus more available in there. The waiver wire pickups article hits the primary offensive targets, gives bid recommendations, gives some drop candidates. And then Matt Milano is the cover boy for the IDP waiver pickups article this week. Also got some edge players, some DB options in there if you're in need for the 16 buy in your IDP league. As always, we do all of this to try to make Draft Sharks your unfair advantage.